Today I'm going to go over with you the Renaissance art values and characteristics. So this is a medieval painting. It is by Giotto, and it's a crucifixion scene, which is very typical for medieval art, but also Renaissance art. And Giotto was early for his time. This, believe it or not, is attempting to be 3D by tilting Jesus' head forward. Giotto showed a lot of Renaissance promise. Unfortunately, he was killed by the plague, and so perhaps if he had lived a little bit longer, the Renaissance might have come a little bit earlier. But this is a very flat painting of religious subjects, very typical for medieval times. This is another medieval painting by Simone Martini of the Annunciation, where the angel Gabriel is telling Mary the news about her being the mother of God. And you can see that this is not 3D at all. The purpose is to tell a story. They don't really look human. They look oddly colored. If you look at Gabriel's hand holding the branch, it's very stiff. It's not lifelike. It's meant to teach a story, teach a biblical story, and it's not concerned with how individuals look. So generally in medieval art, you would find religious subjects, gold backgrounds, two-dimensionality, not 3D, but there is a lot of detail, to be sure, just not very lifelike detail. So to compare Martini's Annunciation with Da Vinci's interpretation of the Annunciation, there's certainly a lot more color. The people look a lot more real. The hands show movement and real positions that a human hand would be in. It's also pretty symmetrical. If you'll notice the cinder blocks and the trees, they all kind of help lead you back toward that mountain. But still religious subjects, but a lot more color, a lot more reality in who these people are, and as well as symmetry. This is another Renaissance piece, still of Mary or the Madonna, and then the two children are John the Baptist and Jesus. And you see it's realistic. The humans look like humans. The children are playful. Hands and knees and all of that look real. And there's also a symmetry of the triangle, right? If Mary's at the head, you can see the triangle that forms there. And if you were to fold this painting in half, each child would be perfectly on a side, as well as the backdrops would be perfectly balanced. This is also quite the epitome of the Renaissance. You have the beauty, the lifelikeness. This is actually painted up on a ceiling, well, not quite a ceiling, but the top of a wall, and it looks like you're in the room. You're in the room that is painted there in that scene. So this is by Raphael. It's called The School of Athens. It was painted for the Pope's personal library. It is still there. It's on the wall there. But it's the School of Athens. These are all sorts of Greek philosophers. In the center are Plato and Aristotle, indicating their philosophy, pointing up to the realm of ideas. Aristotle's pointing down at the tangible world. Socrates is midway to the left in green, ticking off arguments on his fingers. At the foreground in the right, you have the bald Euclid, bending over at a slight angle to demonstrate a geometric formula. And Raphael is showing that Renaissance thinkers are just as good as the ancients. He paints the Renaissance greats in the painting. Leonardo da Vinci, whom Raphael greatly idolized, is in the role of Plato. Euclid is the architect, Donato Bramante, and Raphael himself is the next to the last one on the far right with a black beret. And it also, if you're familiar with the Last Supper painting by Leonardo da Vinci, you have figures grouped all around in the center of a calm. And then it's balanced. Philosophers are to the left, scientists are to the right. All the lines, the floor tiles, the walls, the arches converge right at the center at Plato and Aristotle. And you still kind of have a little halo above their heads with the arches, saying that these are saints. A lot of geographical order. So this is quite an epic Renaissance painting in beauty, but also very much showing the idealism of Greek and Roman thought. And an interesting fact too, opposing this wall, so across from this painting is a very religious scene in the Pope's library. So they're kind of opposing each other, facing each other in the same place. All right, looking at these two sculptures, you see a lot of movement, you see a lot of realism. One of them is a Renaissance sculpture, and one of them is a Greek sculpture. Can you tell the difference? Can you take a guess which is which? Think about it. And really it is hard to tell the difference. The one on the right is Mercury, and that is a Renaissance sculpture. And the one on the left is of Poseidon, and it is a Greek sculpture. We don't know who it's by, though. Looking at this architecture even, you can see some very clear influences. You can look at the columns here and think of Greece, and you can see the arches here and think of Rome, the Colosseum, the aqueducts. But these are both in Florence at the Uffizi Gallery. And then there's this painting, right? This is from the Renaissance. It's incredibly famous. Why? What is the big deal? Why is it a big deal for the Renaissance? What makes this Renaissance? I'll let you think about that and consider that on your own. And finally, just to put it into some clear words for you, Renaissance traits celebrate the individual, right? They show ordinary citizens. And the one we just looked at, right? Who's that Mona Lisa? She's not a religious figure. So there are certainly still religious figures and popes in Renaissance art, but that's not the only thing. I also mentioned in class that people were signing their works for the first time. Before, they would give all the glory to God and not sign their work, but now they're still giving glory to God, but willing to sign. Autobiographies also come around at this time, people willing to talk about themselves. You'll also find realism, and that's mainly, there's a bit of idealism too of the human body, but it's mainly through 3D, through in drawings and even on those baptistry doors of Ghiberti that we saw in the Rick Steves video. It's 3D. They use, not path, sorry, they use math principles as well as perspective to make you feel like this flat painting is actually 3D. Everything is nicely symmetrical in art and architecture. Some of the sculpture and art, it's posed, but there's also a lot of emotion and motion being shown. And then there's also the enjoyment of worldly pleasures. Some of them are a bit sensuous, perhaps, or they're just celebrating people in general. They're celebrating this world. It's not a heavenly scene of gold, but they'll even paint some of these religious scenes in the setting, in the beautiful setting of Italy, of Florence, celebrating the beauty around them in this world. So those are some traits that will hopefully help you distinguish what makes something distinctly Renaissance. I hope this helps you. And finally, I just want to point out that the images I used were from Wikimedia Commons, so they are open for use. And much of the information I have is from Rick Steves' book. There's Rick Steves' Europe 101, History and Art for the Traveler, as well as Rick Steves' Travel Guide to Florence and Tuscany, Florence in particular here, from 2008.